Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Happy Monday, all you mentees. Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my advanced overview of the Invincible Iron Man Omnibus Volume 2 from Marvel Comics. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So, before going any further, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on August 13th or 14th, depending on where you get your books. This is a reprint. This has been printed before, but this is the 2024 reprint. I'm not sure when you're watching this, and who knows, maybe you're watching this in 2028, and this will already be reprinted again. But this is the 2024 reprint. This is the direct market cover here by the legendary Gene Colan. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover, and that is supplied by Salvador La Roca. Now, the standard edition cover is the one that's available everywhere. Doesn't matter where you shop. I think maybe even Walmart. I know Toys R Us in Canada. The direct market cover is only available at places like your local comic book store, cheapgraphicnovels.com, waltzcomicshop.com, bdcosmos.com, and also comicsbugle.com, readcomics.com, and Dying Breed Collectors, Organic Price Books, In Stock Trades, Tales of Wonder, DCBS, and places like that. But everything underneath the dust jacket is the same, so let's focus back on this. I love Gene Colan. I think the older I get, he is getting to be one of my favorite artists, and his Iron Man is no exception. But then somebody else comes along that, man, just looking at it through a different eyes, I don't know what it is, but we'll talk more about that here when I open the book. Marvel Omnibus, The Invincible Iron Man, Lee, Goodwin, Colan, and Tuska. That's what I'm talking about, George Tuska. And this image right there of Iron Man, Volume 2. I believe that's the Gladiator issue, if I'm not mistaken. Experience the stories that defined a comic book icon. So here's all the covers, what's collected in here, the Marvel logo, rated teen, and the retail price of $100. Underneath the dust jacket, it's something they've been doing for a while, but let's look at the flaps first. The continuing adventures of the cool exec with a heart of steel, and then a little bio on the creators like Stan Lee, Archie Goodwin, Gene Colan, George Tuska, and Johnny Craig. Man, just looking, they're all gone. Yeah, they're all gone. Back to this. So the Invincible Iron Man Omnibus right there with the logo, and then you have the Marvel Omnibus and Invincible Iron Man, Lee, Goodwin, Colan, and Tuska, and then this image that will be in the standard edition spine and Volume 2, and then that image of the Golden Avenger. Alright, we are going to crack this book open. I don't have the original printing of the Volume 2, so I can't do a comparison, but we are going to crack this book open. I'm going to talk about the stories in here, and we'll look at the build, and of course, look at this beautiful artwork. Alright, let's go ahead and crack this omnibus open. We have some black-end sheets and your title page here with this cover of the LMD, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. The Invincible Iron Man Omnibus Volume 2, what it collects, and of course, in big, bold letters, who the creators behind this particular omnibus are. And mainly written by Archie Goodwin, this particular book. Stan Lee, of course, writing the Tales of Suspense issues. Gene Colan. George Tuska coming in and taking over the book, but not before Johnny Craig comes in there and also does some fill-in issues. And then the inks right here by Frank Giacoia, Dan Adkins, Johnny Craig, Mike Esposito, and, oh, well, let's just keep going here. Sam Rosen is the letterer, Art Simek, and Gaspar Saladino, just to name a few. Unfortunately, the coloring during this time goes uncredited. So, yeah. And this is just what happens. They weren't keeping tabs on who was doing what. They weren't expecting collected editions one day. Here's your table of contents where you're going to find each of these issues. And, of course, where the issues originated from, what date it originated from, and then, of course, the title of this particular story found in those issues. You have the introduction here, and is by Arlen Schumer, who's a historian of comic book art, talking about pretty much Gene Colan and the stories found in here, and the transition from Tales of Suspense, sorry, not Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense to Iron Man, and of course, Captain America. And then we kick it off with issue 84 of Tales of Suspense. So this does collect material from Tales of Suspense 84 to 99, Iron Man 1 through 25, and then Iron Man and Submariner number 1. So just a little bit of history here. Tales of Suspense was a title that was shared by Iron Man and Captain America. And they each had just a certain amount of pages. And then eventually the title, when it got to issue 99, they decided, wait a minute, Captain America is huge. Let's make Tales of Suspense Captain America, and then we'll give Iron Man his own title. So that's why you're going to see, like, maybe you're looking through here for the first time and you're wondering, wait a second, why does this look like a really short story? Okay, so in these issues, this is where Tony is pretty much explaining to Congress that he is not Iron Man. He's trying to find a way to, lie and say that he's not Iron Man. There's no way that he could be. He ends up suffering a heart attack during that particular, I guess it's not really an interrogation, but it's more so of a gathering of Congress and telling them, look, I don't know what you're talking about. So what ends up happening is that someone else has to go under the suit. And that somebody is his buddy, Happy Hogan. I love this cover right here. Again, this is Gene Colan, Frankie Giacoia. Of course, Frank Giacoia doing the inks. But the Mandarin comes in and mistakes the man under the armor for Tony Stark. Now, at this time, of course, Mandarin doesn't know who is under that armor. All he knows is that his enemy is Iron Man. But it turns out to be Happy Hogan, his buddy. So that story continues, and again, you're going to have the complete covers here, even the ones that don't feature the Golden Avenger. I love this image right here. It's a very Samson-esque image of him just holding those pillars together. You still have his supporting cast of Pepper Pot, and of course, Happy Hogan. And now they're dating, and they're getting a little more intimate with each other. And Gene Colan supplying the artwork during this particular era. This is the Mole Man. I love this part that he tells Pepper Potts, like, hey, you need to stay behind. And then Tony tells her that. And then Iron Man's like, why didn't you listen to Tony Stark? Because he's still pretending to be two different people. Of course, the only one that knows during this time is his friend, Happy Hogan. And this is the fight with Mole Man. Then we keep going here with issues 89. This is the Melter. I think he comes in with a new costume here. And what happens is he ends up melting the Iron Man costume, the new armor. So he has to go back to the classic armor right here. So truly going back to the days of the Golden Avenger. So more fights against the Melter there. This makes for a really interesting story. This is the introduction of Crusher. By the way, during this time, you're going to see some of his supporting cast kind of just end up leaving, and some of them are replaced by this guy named Jasper Sitwell, who's also appearing in the pages of the Avengers, and he's that agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's almost like the liaison, but he is going to be a big player through this. Now, what I find interesting about this is that, and the next story arc actually, is that this is when Iron Man goes to this particular country that is being ruled by this power-hungry militant type of leader. So, I mean, obviously it's Cuba, and obviously it's Fidel Castro, but they don't call him that. They just call him El Presidente. Anyway, this is the introduction of this soldier named Smasher, who will be coming back, but not quite yet. And then he ends up going to Vietnam. And in Vietnam, this is a 3-part storyline. It's where he's going to meet this villain named Half-Face. And Half-Face, his whole thing is that he's trying to revive the Titanium Man. Lots of beautiful splash pages. Just Gene Colan's art all over this, the beginning of this omnibus. Yeah, it's phenomenal. This stuff has been available, by the way, in Marvel Masterworks and, of course, Epic Collections. And it has been available in the first printing of the Omnibus. So who's behind all that? Well, you can find that out for yourself. I'm not going to go over each and every one of these issues, but just kind of give you an idea of what the beginning is, and then we'll go on into the next few eras of Iron Man. It is interesting to see that even during this time, because we're looking at, what, 68, 69, how Marvel is still involved with the world around them. I mean, Marvel's always been the world outside your window, right? But if there's something going on like the Vietnam War, it's interesting to see how the characters play a role. Like, we're not looking at the era of World War II with Captain America, where everything seems to be just one-sided, despite of the portrayal of some of the characters you're going to be seeing through here. This is the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Gargoyle makes an appearance. Now, this sets up the last few story arcs. But anyway, back to what I was saying about the Vietnam story. It is interesting to see how they were able to do it without in your face giving you a social commentary as to what's going on and what could be really going on. Okay, so then the Gargoyle storyline leads into one thing after another. Like, Gargoyle, of course, being a character from the pages of Thor, and he wants to steal Thor's hammer, that's the whole thing, but he actually needs, or as it turns out, he needs this piece from Tony Stark's armor, or his technology rather, to go and steal and get this hammer. So it's almost like a side quest. He's trying to steal something to go and steal something else. So he has to break into Stark Industries, and this is where Tony Stark, of course, is like, what are you doing here? So that leads into the next storyline, because it's kind of depowering Iron Man in a way. Iron Man's using a lot of his armor. And the next story arc is the Tales of Suspense 97 to 99, and that will lead into the kickoff. So, like, it's one story after another is what's happening here. And this is, of course, Whiplash. Now, Whiplash is working for this corporation, or rather this, he's working for the mob. They're called the Magia. Much like in the way of The Godfather, that they couldn't use the word mafia or mob, in comics, they also stepped away from using those particular words to describe those kind of characters that would be appearing through here. Probably for the same reasons, I don't know. I'm sure there's a whole history as to why they did not use mob, mobster, mafia in comics during this time. But it is the Magia, and they are being ran by this character named Big M. And Big M is a kind of a big revelation as to who that character is. So this is the fight against Whiplash. Now, as I mentioned, it is one thing that leads into another. It is a 3-part story arc. And by this point, here we go. Let's actually talk about this issue. By this point, Archie Goodwin is stepping in. Archie Goodwin came from the world of Warren Publishing, so he was working on Eerie magazine and also Creepy magazine and Vampirella. But Stan wanted to hire more and more people, because also during this time, it's really interesting to see, like, just the history of comics. They were able to put out more books than they were before. So that's why they split Captain America and Iron Man. No more of this Tales of Suspense nonsense. We're going to split up the books, and Cap will have his own book, and Iron Man will have his own book, because now we don't really have to abide by these rules of having just a few books ship a month. Now we can actually put out the stories we want to. In order to do that, he had to go to a talent pool and pick out some people, including Archie Goodwin, who comes in and becomes the regular writer. And as I mentioned, this story that started with the Grey Gargoyle moves into the final issue here of Tales of Suspense, which is issue 99, and Cap in his own mag. But what about Iron Man? Just wait and see. That leads into the Iron Man and Submariner special. It's a continuation of the storyline. And then we finally get issue number 1 of his ongoing series. Gene Colan is staying here. Now he is being inked by another veteran in the comic book industry, and that is Johnny Craig. Johnny comes from the world of EC Comics, so a lot of crime stuff. You may have seen like some of his stuff in the Tales from the Crypt. If you've been getting a lot of the EC archives, that's where he comes from, and that's what he starts inking here. Now, he will eventually draw some of the issues throughout here. So this is the fight with the LMDs, which are the life model decoys, Remember that I said they would play a big part later on. Letter pages, by the way, all intact. All the introductions that were in the original Marvel Masterworks, all intact through here. Now we're getting to this era of Iron Man, and that is when Archie Goodwin becomes the full-time writer ever since issue number 1, and then Johnny Craig becomes the artist. Now, somebody else will be coming in after Johnny Craig, and that's, of course, George Tuska. Gorgeous George, I think is what Stan Lee called him, because he was like a 6-foot guy, built like a football player. I've always heard stories like that. He's a little bit older. He's a veteran, of course, of the comic book industry, just like Johnny Craig was. But it's interesting, like, when you're looking at the panel layouts from Gene Colan, even from Gene Colan, which is doing these kind of panels, and then when you get to George Tuska, how his panels are just not traditional. Now, with Archie Goodwin comes another couple of supporting cast, and that is Drexter. Oh, what is his name? Drexel Cord. That's his name, and his daughter Janice. She will play a kind of a love interest to Tony Stark. And also other characters too. Kind of like the way Pepper Potts was at first, and then, eventually Happy Hogan and her. Now, they are still in the book, don't get me wrong, but we are getting some new faces in here. We have the return of the Unicorn in this particular story. There is the Daredevil story too. This is the return of Crusher, where Gladiator comes in. And this is when we start getting this. Yeah, it's the Gladiator. When we start getting this new era of the Iron Man logo. So the logo was like this, right, for a while, and then we started getting this, like made of steel, metal, and this is the return of the Magia. And this time around, the Magia brings in this newer character, who may or may not have appeared before, and that is Madame Mask. And Madame Mask has had a long history with the character of Iron Man. This is the fight against the Hulk. And we have the Masked Marauder here. No, the Masked Marauder was with the Gladiator. Sorry, they have very similar costumes. This is... Well, no, his identity will remain hidden. And that's all I will say about that. It is the first appearance of the Controller that we have through these pages. And by now, we do have, as you can tell from the panels, again, the difference between these panel layouts and even Gene Colan's, but then Johnny Craig's, when he comes in, they just look very traditional compared to what this gentleman was doing. And this is George Tuska. Now, Johnny Craig is inking some of this stuff earlier on. But yeah, I really like the way that he lays out the panels. It makes you pay attention. It makes you sometimes guess where you're supposed to be reading. And I know some people hate that, but I think what he was doing here is just trying to get used to drawing this particular series. Because I think before this he had worked on some, was it Fox Comics? And then he had done the, it was a Captain America comic. But here he is taking on the role of the artist on Iron Man. And then this is the, I guess, the third era. This is the story with the Phantom and Janice. The return of the Unicorn teaming up with the Red Ghost here. Again, loving the panel layouts. And this is, actually, I have to talk about this. Man, that's some damn fine page flipping there. Did not even mean to come back to this. I thought I was going to be looking for it. This is by George Tuska. This is the introduction to the Marvel Masterworks 6, I assume, of Iron Man. And just reading how much love he had for the character of Iron Man and how much he saw himself in that character. He talks about his history, where he worked, and how he's always been drawing. He talks about the greats, like just being influenced by artists like Winsor McKay or Hal Foster or Alex Raymond, and meeting Jack Kirby and forever changing his life. Like, I think it's so cool because it's always a case of art inspired by art to me. When people see some things very similar to another artist, and it's weird to see that now. George passed away in 2009, and it's so sad to see this being probably his last introduction of any of the books. Man, yeah. So my point was, I love reading those introductions. To me, they are a beautiful reminder of where these people were at one time. and hearing it from them, you know, where these ideas came from, where these stories came from, where the inspiration for some of these characters came from. I love seeing the behind the scenes. Even the drama that some people put in their intro about people just not getting along, or who their favorite inkers were. For example, people love the team up, this is the Red Ghost that I was talking about, between George Tuska's pencils and then Johnny Craig's inks. And they're great. Johnny Craig does an amazing job cleaning up his, there's Madame Mask, cleaning up a lot of George Tuska's art. However, his favorite inker was Mike Esposito. Now, I have heard from fans of Iron Man that to a lot of them, like, it gets no better than George Tuska. And I completely understand that. Because I didn't realize that he had been on this book. He stays on this book for 10 years, making him one of the definitive artists on Iron Man. Because, you know, through his run, we do see the changes of his particular armors throughout the years. And, of course, the changes in Tony Stark himself. This is Midas and the story with Madame Mask. This is the fight against Lucifer from the pages of X-Men. And I stopped at this issue, not because Lucifer is one of my favorite villains of all time, even though he has ties to the X-Men, but this is the beginning of the Archie Goodwin, George Tuska, and Mike Esposito on inks. It is credited, you'll see, to Joe Gaudioso, but that's just one of the pen names that he would use, Mike Esposito. Now, this was his favorite inker. This is George Tuska's favorite inker. He's like, I realized in his intro, it's really cool, that a lot of people appreciated mine and Johnny Craig's art together. But to me, my favorite inker was Mike Esposito. And I think that's really cool that every penciler had their own favorite inker. And the more introductions you read, the more you learn about these particular people. And it's sometimes a little bit of the drama that happened behind the scenes. The Return of the Titanium Man, and then we get some heartache throughout these particular stories too. This guy, not the Punisher, the Mercenary. I think this is the Mercenary right here making his first appearance, and when you can find out how that particular story ends, letter pages, intact, the entire letter pages. I love that they do that. And the beginning of the Minotaur story here, Madame Mask forever changing or hiding her face, and the last issue collected in this particular omnibus, this one here, is the fight against Namor, the Submariner. Superheroes, that's what they were doing back then. One of the things I didn't... Oh, not Brand Ech. This wasn't noted to be collected in here. So this is material from Not Brand Ech, issue number 2. And... oh, this is Magnet Robot Biter. Of course, that's a take on the Magnus Robot Fighter. Not Brand Ech being the comical monthly magazine. One of the things I did notice, and I'm sure somebody got a no price for this, was Pepper Potts. Really not that important, you know, redhead throughout the whole thing. But for one issue, she had blonde hair. Of course, she may have dyed her hair, and there's my no price, right? Just for that particular month. Then we have some original art here. Gene Colan, Frank Giacoia doing the inks. Mike Esposito on Gene Colan for that first issue. Beautiful piece of art right there. Some more original art of the covers. Johnny Craig, George Tuska. Here's a cover by George Tuska. And alterations were always done by John Romita at Marvel Comics. Like, he was hired to go behind people, not behind people's backs, behind people, you know, depending on the editor, and change somebody's face or maybe the hand, something like that. All right, so this right here is the cover to issue number 23. And really quickly, the cover to issue 23 was actually this piece right here by Marie Severin. I guess editorial changed their mind, and they were like, hey, we actually like this piece that was supposed to be on page 15 instead of this. And they decided to print this as the cover instead of this. So there's a little behind the scenes. I love extras for that reason. The cover to issue 24 and 25, Marie Severin and Sam Granger. And then some internal artwork, original art, and then some reprints over here, the double feature. And the cover to Omnibus Volume 2. 2010, has it been out of print for 14 years? Let's look at this binding. 848 pages. It is sewn binding, printed at the iMac printer, and I'll just say, it's thicker than I remember the iMac printer being, honestly. There is just a little bit of bleed through. Not sure if that's it. Maybe you... Trying to see if you can see the image. Okay, so here's an image. There's an actual image behind this, so I don't think that's a good page to show. Let me... Actually, here we go. There's some white, so there's minimal bleed through happening. It's usually on white or on lighter colors that you can see the bleed through more. But honestly, it's something that I look for. Here we go, like over here. You might see that word bubble a little bit. Not as bad as it used to be. I know I'm saying that to people, it doesn't make any sense. If you just started collecting, what does that mean? The paper stock used to be a lot thinner. It seems like they have thickened it up at the iMac printer. Binding is still, to me, it's the sewn binding. Just not much of an eye, but not really a lot of spread pages. So you don't really have to worry about the gutter loss happening. Lots and lots of beautiful splash pages through here. This book is full of beautiful artwork. But that is it. Iron Man Omnibus Volume 2 is here. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on picking this up, if you have it in Epic Collection, in Masterwork Collection, or you have been waiting for this reprint. And then, of course, the Volume 3 coming out, oh my goodness, here in a couple of weeks. But I'll be doing that overview next week. And, of course, what other era of old Shellhead you want to see collected in omnibus format? Do you want to continue with the Volume 4? Do you want a follow-up to the Michelini and John Romita Jr. era? Or do you want something modern? Like, I guess modern would be the Matt Fraction, Salvador La Roca era, or the Christopher Cantwell era. Regardless, leave those comments down below. Don't forget to smash that like button. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.